By now, you probably know. I'm not even going to show it, to be honest, the tweet itself, but you should know that it exists. Mr. Intellectual, LeBron James. And he shared a tweet, like once this whole news popped off with the, what's her name, Malika Bryant, if I'm not mistaken, in that situation in which she was killed by way of the police as she was about to stab this woman, or this other girl. And yeah, the cop shot her 4 times. She got killed. You know, you already know my thoughts on that. I'm not going to spend all the time giving you my thoughts on that. Just watch the previous shows or watch the previous segments. But he sent out a tweet that got the cop that was in that actually put down, if you will, that teenager, if you consider a credible threat. And he had something along the lines to say of "you're next" or something like that. Obviously, this is going right after the Derek Chauvin being found guilty on all accounts. And he said "you're next." Now, that tweet, of course, spread around, and he deleted it at some point. Now, he deleted it, and he comes back, and he has a couple of more tweets, and he's saying, "Oh, I'm so tired. We got to look at the facts and all these other stuff." This is the thing. Angles, all about the different angles to take about this. I have to take with this because LeBron James, he's an example of the beauty that I would argue of a free enterprise, where, and this is why it is obviously say what you will, a preferable thing as opposed to, let's say, something like state socialism, because you don't have to be the smartest person ever in the room in order to be financially or economically successful. LeBron James is a prime example of that. He is not that smart. He has the most generic positions as it pertains to social issues, but he has clearly taken a stance that that's something that he wants to be sort of known as the guy that gets all the, he has his social preferences worn all on his sleeves. And he uses the platform that was given to him by way of being a gifted athlete and a solid basketball player. He uses that platform to do that, and that's the legacy that he wants to leave. And it's just right, what have you. But this isn't the first time, and it certainly won't be the last time that he says something just utterly stupid, hypocritical, just outrageous. And this is what he does, right? But again, free enterprise allows him to do that because you get people that can be specialty folks, where they have something that they're really, really good at, and they can make a lot of money on it if they're really good at. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. Yeah, you can pay someone that's smarter than you to help you out with the things that you clearly don't know. But the social issues he clearly doesn't understand. However, it is not. This isn't something that's unique to LeBron James by any means, or even sports athletes, where you got to understand these guys are race hustlers. Okay, these are race hustlers, and race hustlers do what race hustlers do, and getting information isn't important to them. Like getting more information. In the last segment I said that you guys shouldn't have to feel like you have to have such an aggressive, loud opinion on something the minute that news breaks out that there was some sort of occurrence. You don't have to do that. You shouldn't feel obligated to, but unfortunately with social media and the connectivity and people get off on that, everybody has to feel like they have to chime in immediately. So as more information comes out, it doesn't have to come out. That's irrelevant. It's just about whatever narrative or personal agenda that you have, and you will comment immediately on it, even if it makes you look stupid. So this is why when you wonder why some of these race hustlers try to make martyrs out of the worst possible case scenarios. And it's the state, right, that we're talking about, and police. Like, there shouldn't be a whole lot of, maybe in terms of how they present it, but it shouldn't be much of a shortage to find examples of the state doing bad things in which the party was completely innocent. There's no gray areas or anything like that in the state, whether it be in its agents or what have you, did something bad. It shouldn't be that difficult to find those instances. But when you're stupid and when you're driven by your whatever narrative that you're trying to perpetuate, then, well, that's what happens. You jump immediately to whatever conclusion. They thought knew it was a black chick. And half the time we'll have a segment later today. Well, sometimes they don't even have to do that, and they'll find that out later. But it's because this isn't about actually trying to rid the world of some sort of aggression. I don't think at all LeBron James or any of those quacks are at all interested in using their platform to try to minimize state violence or state aggression by any means. I don't think that's what's on their list at all. And I think it goes to show when they do stuff like this, when they pick the instances where the area isn't as black and white. You know, when you got someone about to be stabbed, like, that's not one that you generally want to bolster up and act like, oh, you're next. That's what he said. You're next. Like he's Goldberg or something. But that's they pick and you wonder why you see that. You know, you see these other instances where someone gets killed by the cops and, you know, they were actually like in the act of committing an act of aggression or something like that. It's like the worst possible case scenario when you got cops that shoot folks for red flag laws. Like, you got all these other sort of instances that you could point to that is an example of them doing bad, and you pick the worst scenarios. It's because you're leading with agenda and you need to jump immediately. So whatever narrative that you can, well, you know what the narrative it is they try to paint, that's where you go. And this is what the race hustlers do. And unfortunately, a lot of these race hustlers are very powerful people in terms of their influence. Was it given to them by way of being smart and being knowledgeable? Of course not. That doesn't stop them from being influential. So that's the catch, that you can be a very influential, powerful, wealthy person and be stupid. But that's also, it goes the other way in that, of course, that person has influence. So, yeah, LeBron James can go out there and feel like he's just the next coming of Malcolm X, and he's holding books that he's never read. He can do stuff like that and he can get away with it. And it's not like anybody that's within his circle or within the circle of sports media, within a circle of race hustlers who look to try to minimize and everything to some sort of point of race. Those types of guys will never, ever, ever address that, and he'll never have to be held accountable because, again, the politics that he has is the same that everybody in those sort of cultural entities they have. So he gets to do that. So he deleted it nonetheless. I don't know if that's quite an admission, maybe an admission that he did. It was kind of dumb, or at least somewhat he didn't consider it all. And maybe somebody in his circle did end up telling him, I don't know. Okay, maybe that's not the hill to die on with this situation, because at least this chick was in the middle. This isn't a chick just walking down the street. This is a chick in the middle of like about to stab someone. Maybe that's not the one that you want to. It didn't change him, because if you look at his tweets, I believe the day we shot the segment, if you look at those tweets, he sits there and he'll say that he's basically talking around admission. And saying like, okay, yeah, this was this, but you know, we're tired of this. There is injustice, all of this sort of stuff. No, we need people to be held accountable, and he will never be held accountable for being reckless and using his platform recklessly. Now, what this means, and I think what the reason I want to approach it in the way that I am is because you guys have to understand how these guys operate. And how these types of not just the race hustlers, but very influential celebrities who are known for doing things that don't require them to have to think in another sphere. Like, you can be very, very smart in one area. Like, I'm not going to doubt, let's say, his basketball IQ by any means. But when it comes to this instance, he's simply not that smart, but he wants to, that's the legacy that he wants to leave. Now, I think me talking to my audience, or rather bringing this up to my audience, is one thing. I've told you guys that putting these guys on a pedestal is not, and this is for people that are in my genre, or rather my profession as well, and being a musician. These guys are not, there's some of them that don't, it's just not that many of them. I would say if I had to put a percentage of it, just flailing, I'd say probably 1% of these be the musicians, the athletes, and the people that everybody's chiming in on these social issues. I would say 1% of them are actually knowledgeable on the stuff it is that they're talking about. The others aren't. So again, it's probably me speaking to the choir when I say you probably shouldn't be holding them up to be these like role models and expect for them to have to use their platform to not be reckless, if you will. But there is an audience that I hope comes across this segment or comes across this video. Dude, just because a person is wealthy, famous, does not mean that they got the right ideas. Now, that sounds like a simple thing. But a lot of you guys' actions, when you expect them, this is why I would never, ever say that an athlete or such, like to shut up and dribble. I took issue with that. Obviously, I don't think that you should feel as if you have to shut up and do whatever it is that you do. You're within your right to speak on certain issues. That doesn't mean that you're not a dumbass. That's my thing. And unfortunately, like there's when we assess what it is that they say, we give them a lot more leeway than we would give a lot of other people's, because they have a platform. So when he says something reckless or just verifiably wrong, it's not like he's going to see much of a consequence for it, because the people still herald him as, okay, he has the right idea and he's powerful and he's pushing whatever agenda it is that I personally would prefer that he push. Again, he's top to bottom. He's just mainstream leftist Democrat, like that. And from LeBron James' perspective, and a lot of those basketball guys, if you read some of those Players Tribune, you got guys, even Kyle Korver apologizing for being a white fucking loser. Like those guys, their NBA's all in. This is why I don't know if I've watched one game of NBA this year, which sounds bizarre coming from me. But it's just, the more longer I went without it, the more I was like, this, I don't gotta watch this, man. Like this is, and I'm not interested in all of they're hearing it. Like, it's one thing for them to use, hell, like LeBron did, to just tweet out something. It's another thing to be like talking about social issues during the game and all that and commercial. I'm just not interested in that. But for the people who maybe are fond of Mr. LeBron James, all I'm saying is this: reassess who you put on a pedestal and expect to be role models. Much like state agents, though not exactly like, it's a standard that you hold people to. And the idea of, like, for example, what I argue from a philosophical standpoint, we're not equal beings. I don't think that doesn't exist. There's no such thing as the same man, like the great Thomas Sowell said. The same man isn't even equal to himself on different days. But as far as a standard of definitely when it comes to something that deals with aggression upon a human being. So let's say this instance out there was in Columbus, Ohio, if I'm not mistaken. We should be able to hold, whether you're you're analyzing that situation, the people that are involved in that. Instances like those, we should be able to have an actual standard that shouldn't have to be so on the opposite ends of different spectrums as we converse and talk about. And we hold these entities, or this person is this type of folk, so we hold them to these different standards, because completely different standards, like standards that aren't even in the same stratosphere, because they are in those positions. You see that with cops, state agents, be it politicians, and you see that with people like rich, famous people that are like basketball players who get to say just reckless, dumb stuff because they are leading with their emotions, and they're leading with, in the LeBron case, I just think that he just wants to go down as this. I'm not like Jordan. Like Jordan and Michael Jordan get involved in all this stuff. You know what I mean? Like that's the legacy that he wants to leave, that it's bigger than him and all sorts of stuff. So he feels, even though he's not even remotely knowledgeable on some of these situations, he feels as if he has to always tweet about it or has to talk about it, because that's the legacy that he wants to leave. It doesn't stop him from, and other race hustlers, from doing things like what they're doing now, and that is using the worst possible scenario to try to conflate a different issue. And that is, black people being harmed by state agents. You can find a multitude of examples on that. You shouldn't have to die on that hill of, I don't know, someone about to stab someone in the damn neck. You just watched a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake. Catch us live at 12 p.m. throughout the week over at youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and follow us over at odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. If you want to watch the entire video cast after the show is over, just be sure to become a member on the YouTube channel. Of course, the full audio portion of the podcast is available for free on all major digital platforms, or just visit forcanonsake.com.